Hi.
Hi.
How are ya?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm, a little tired. We were in Florida.
Yeah, we've been on the road. We got another trip coming up too. And this is a big week. We got big
Yeah.
elections coming up.
Yeah, it's
Um,
been a lot. It's been good though. Well, we're fine.
so welcome to Influenced. To quote one of my favorite podcast hosts, I'm not gonna lie, I'm I'm feeling I'm feeling a little bleak. I know that I'm usually like our positivity cheerleader, and I still
Kind of switch places.
I know. And you know what? And the same with me and Matt. He's always like, usually like a little bit more stressed and serious. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. Like, I know what to do. And then but it's always good in like a partnership and a
Yeah.
marriage to have like, you can only have one person freak out at a time.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see how that always, we seem to switch without like telling each other. And I
Right.
kind of, I appreciate that
Yeah.
support. So I do still overall feel hopeful about the Democratic Party, but it's more the movement of the electorate that's starting to feel like a bigger mountain to climb. We just returned from a retreat with the DNC, and I feel that they're very fired up. Like Ken is,
He's great.
He's like, the gloves are off. He projected a lot of strength and the sort of fortitude to meet the moment. This is Ken Martin, the chair of the DNC. But something that has really been keeping me up at night, I think we have the graphic, is this map of the projections of the congressional reappointments for 2030.
It's really fucking scary, guys.
It's not great. Basically, so basically all of the southern states, a bunch of the southern states.
Like, think of places that your friends are like
all
moving
moving.
to. So Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, Colorado.
Yeah, they're all going to have increased representation, and states like New York, California, Illinois are going to lose seats.
And this is for the Electoral College.
And it impacts the Electoral College, and it will also impact how many congressmen you have to send. So, like, basically, people are relocating from states like ours because it's impossible to fucking afford to live here, and they're going to more affordable states, and they're going to redder states. And so we need the Dem trifectas that we have in California and Illinois and New York to do something about the cost of living. Use your power and fucking legislate. And then we also need to win big in 26 and 28, and we need to prove to people that Democrats are strong, competent winners who will pass bold progressive legislation at the state and federal level that will make your life more affordable and safer. So we both need to message differently, but we need to do things differently too. And we talked this weekend a lot about the Democratic brand, that we are perceived as weak and woke, and we need to change that to being strong and right. And I agree with all of that, but something that I do felt lacked this weekend was that there was just not enough focus on new media. Like,
I'm not convinced
that they get
it. I think there's really strong individuals that work for the DNC that get it, but I'm not convinced as an entity.
Right. Like, people who I've had individual conversations with get it, and when I see them talking publicly, they get it. But overall, like, the group as a whole, it's older, it's establishment.
I mean, we were the youngest there, but other than the staffers, we were the youngest there by
a lot.
Yeah.
Even when they put up strategy stuff, like, new media and influencers is like a piece of the pie. It literally was like the bottom right corner on this chart that they put up. And I'm like, all right, well, I have to say, I sat in the same rooms in 2024 and it wasn't even on the board. So at least we're on the board. But, like, let me say this clearly. It's not a piece of the pie. The internet is the whole pie. You win the internet, you win everything. There's reality and there's how it plays on the internet, and the latter is the only thing that matters. And when it comes to winning voters outside of our little New York Times reading bubble, the internet is how you do it. And when we were having these conversations last weekend, what annoyed me the most in the Democratic establishment, they're not ignoring it because they're willful. And yeah, there's the whole like consultant industrial complex, and the consultants get paid to place TV commercials. But that is definitely dying, and it's dying because Ken Martin stood up there and said, we fired all the consultants and I don't watch TV. He literally said, I don't watch TV. We're going to stop pulling on, dumping all of our money into TV commercials when we think about successful campaigns. But like, so it's not that. It's like everybody we talked to was like, well, I don't like the internet. It's non-fact checked voices. The internet's a cesspool. They don't like the fact that these non-fact checked voices now dominate political discourse. And like, hey, guess what? I don't like it either. But like, it's where we find ourselves. Like it's so much that metaphor of like, don't curse the darkness, light a candle. Like we just keep cursing the darkness and lamenting that the internet is a cesspool of misinformation and division and manipulation. And we continue to just kind of dip our toe into that pool. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a big, scary, terrible place that does big, scary, terrible things, but staying out of it isn't going to fix it. We need to jump the fuck in and start fighting. Get in there and start duking it out in the place where the fight is actually taking place. So with that, let's Demplins. This week's guest I first met when we sat on a panel together almost 2 years ago, trying to explain to people that social media platforms would determine the results of the 2024 election. That was fun. They didn't listen.
Yeah, they did
not. Nope. And she's truly just the most perfect guest for my current mood right now, because when I watch her content, I laugh and I feel uplifted and I feel inspired to keep working. Maya May is a stand-up comedian and co-host of The Breakdown. She's worked with Adam McKay and the Lincoln Project, and she's interviewed every cool politician. She's a writer, director, actress. She's also just one of the nicest people I've ever met in politics, and that says a lot. Her content calms me, yet fuels me, and she's a rare blend of intelligent and informed and funny and kind. Maya May, welcome to Demplins. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. That intro now has given me a new identity, because I was saying before we were recording, I was like, I don't know who I am anymore.
That is who you are.
You just gave me a list of things that I should probably keep doing.
So let's just kick off with like, in the year of our Lord, 2025, how are you? You're an Angelino, you're a woman of color, you're a parent of a teenager, you're a parent of a trans teenager. Those are some tough monikers for the year 2025. How is your current mental state? How are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm actually fine, but that's because I already had my mental breakdown after the midterms. I talk about it a little bit. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I was down. I ended up right after Catherine Cortez Masto. Once that race was called, I just started throwing up. And I realized I had been holding like all of this like stress and tension in my body. And then I proceeded to just go into like a very dark place as I like watched everybody not do the things that I knew needed to be done to prevent what's happening right now. And I was like, nobody's doing the things. All the experts are saying to do these things and no one's doing them.
Like we got too complacent that we did like okay in the 2020, and then that made us not do the things we needed to do to win in the general.
No, I think I have a lot of friends who are very apolitical, not really paying attention to what's going on in the world. And so I think seeing them have no real idea of what's happening and also not really want to know. And then also just in every book about like how to save democracy, it's always like maybe 10 chapters on all of the things that are going wrong, and then a chapter on the things that we should do to fix it. Mm-hmm. And it's always 10 improbable things that people aren't going to do. And so it was more of that. It was, there's always going to be people who are dialed in and doing the work, but we need a critical mass of people doing that. And so I think I didn't see that in the way I knew needed to happen. So I was like, it's all over.
So that's a good segue into kind of one of my first questions for you. I love on New Heights where they do no dumb questions, and I think we need to do more of that in politics. Because even people who are dialed in may not be able to succinctly answer this question as well as you could. What is fascism?
Oh, I love this question. What is fascism? Now it's an easy question, I think, for anybody to answer, to look outside and see what is happening. So the power structures that are used to divide people and to oppress people, starting with the most marginalized, the most easily targeted, which in almost all cases are the LGBTQ community, but also Black and brown community, the Jewish community, religious communities. And so when a power structure attempts to divide people and oppress people in order to amass power, and that means stripping away the cornerstones of what have been our democracy, and I don't want to talk about it in past tense, but free speech, free press, right to assembly. We're seeing all of that being chipped away, and that, I think, is something that is marginalized communities have lived through. So for us, we recognize it, and it's easy to name it and call it what it is. I think for other people who have maybe not necessarily benefited directly from it, but who have not been affected directly by it, are learning now what it is.
Yeah, that's a good and scary summary of what we're living through. And you talk a lot about this on your social media platforms, and you have, for what you're kind of an OG of new media. You've been doing web shows and talking about this for a while. Can you kind of take us through like your journey of working in political new media, being an influencer, being a comedian, being a host? Like I think a lot of times people are like, oh, the right does this and now we're catching up. Well, some of us have been doing this for longer, and you've been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah. So YouTube wasn't always taken seriously as a platform. I remember when I'd say, I have a show, and people are like, oh, well, where can I see it? And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to say YouTube, because everybody's going to be like, that's not a real streaming platform. Streaming is Netflix or Apple. And so back in the day, which really in modern terms, a few years, 4 years is almost like ancient history. But YouTube was this kind of like fledgling media, and it was mostly gamers, and so that was a platform my daughter was watching and teens were watching, but not necessarily a platform that millennials or a Gen X or baby boomers took seriously. And so it was kind of fun in that sense, that you didn't feel the need to be as polished as what you see on the NBCs, the CNNs. And so you could be more genuine, you could be more real. Even now, you're not seeing on cable news people wearing sweatshirts. I decided to put on a sweatshirt because you had sweatshirts on, and I was like, oh yes, right. We can do that here.
And now YouTube is one of the most popular ways for people of all ages, from 13 years old to like my dad, who's in his 60s, to get his information. And so and entertainment, like you just consume anything. Their algorithm on YouTube is amazing, how it just knows exactly what you want to watch next. And I think that is so emblematic of, people were like, oh, YouTube is just a streaming service on the side, and now it's one of the biggest ways that people connect, and that's how social media is being treated right now, right? Oh, those girls that are just making their Instagrams or their TikToks, that's not consequential at all. But, you know, like we always say, look who's in the White House, look how things are going today. So I don't know.
Well, with YouTube, it's on our phones. And so I think once the iPhone came out and once it became possible to watch TV on your phone, no one's watching, you're not changing channels on your phone the way you would sit at home and watch cable and, you know, flip from this channel to that channel. And so everything that you want, everything that you could want is right there in your hand. And so I think that led to this explosive growth. And now, now people, it is the go-to platform. And the algorithm itself, not so sure I love what the algorithm is doing. It's one of the more right-wing type surfacing algorithms out there. And so there's a danger in that. And I don't know that we're on YouTube as much as we need to be. And most of the negative comments that I ever get on anything, the trolling, comes from YouTube.
Yeah. Have you noticed a shift in the algorithm on YouTube as of late, or has it kind of always been? Because I know we talk about the meta algorithms changing and TikTok, but I haven't heard much about the YouTube algorithm.
So I actually was talking to a researcher, randomly ran into in this steam room, and we got into a conversation about YouTube. And turns out they're a professor, and they like do one of the data science where they take, you know, 1 million hours of data off of YouTube and analyze it. And the YouTube algorithm is actually the worst. It's worse than Meta. It's like they're actually the biggest culprit and propagator. And then coincidentally, I was watching Ronny Chieng's new special, and he talks about the manosphere and how someone can start with just wanting to do self-improvement, and within 3 videos, you're storming the Capitol.
Yeah. It's so true. I anecdotally one time went on my husband has never logged into YouTube, has never gone on Shorts, anything. And one time I just opened the app on his phone, scrolled. It was like protein shakes, working out, fascism. It was like literally 3 videos. And there's nothing in his search history or his internet history that would point to that. It's just like...
Well, my daughter was watching YouTube during the pandemic, and I had no idea. And she started to say, like, she was watching Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. I didn't even know at the time who these people were. And it was because she was into gaming. She's into Minecraft. And so she was watching Minecraft stuff, and then it like led her into saying things like, "Oh, Wayfair's trafficking children." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
That was the craziest
I remember that
conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
that was when QAnon was like
really raging. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't remember, there was a theory that there were child trafficking listings on Wayfair because some of their furniture was listed with a name that could be a person's
the
name,
Kiara or the Hannah,
and then it would be very, very expensive. And so what QAnon deduced was that those were listings for trafficking human beings. What it actually was, and Kate Kennedy, who I hope we have on, we actually have her book there, did like a deep dive into this because she's like, this is insane, and she covers a lot of like pop culture, internet conspiracy stuff. It's that when a item on Wayfair sells out, instead of taking down the listing, that's a lot of work to take down the listing and put it back up on their end, I guess. It's easier for them to just go in and make it $1 million so that it doesn't really show up on people's search results. It would be buried in the list if it did. And so then when it comes back in stock, then they just change the thing. And some of them just happen to have names that could also be human names, which you could say of like 1 million products, shirts, whatever. Like that's something that's very common. So that was the explanation. But of course, the right-wing QAnon faction took this and started this whole child trafficking conspiracy, and it just really feeds into all of this, feeds into this umbrella.
It's so performative also, by the way.
Yeah, they don't actually care about children. No. But it's just a mistrust in institutions, it's a mistrust in the government, it's a manufacturing of crises so that they focus on that and not that like Medicaid is going away.
Yeah, God forbid we focus on what matters.
Yeah, so it's pretty terrifying. So, but there's been a real kind of change in the last several years, 5 years. Like when you the first time you started as like a political reporter, online new media person, what kind of changes when was that, and what has the time since then been like? Take us through your journey.
Yeah, so my journey. So I was a stand-up primarily. Like that was my main focus. Stand-up comedy. Yes, my comedy was at the intersection of race, gender, class, politics. I can make everything political. When I started to make that cake this morning, it wasn't supposed to be a political post. I was just making a cake, but everything ends up being political for me. And because of that, the Lincoln Project reached out. They wanted to have a host who could speak to the average person about some of the things that we're seeing in the world right now. And so that was actually with the Lincoln Project, they reached out at the end of, it was in 2020, end of 2020. And so I started right the week of January 6th, January 6th, not the It was such a crazy week because I was teaching a comedy class online to people in Portland and I performed stand-up at colleges like all throughout the country. That was mostly what I was doing, was touring small towns, big towns, like everywhere. And so that week it was just kind of like, okay. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that show in South Carolina and reschedule that one. I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified. It's like, nope, I'm not going to go to South Carolina right after the insurrection. Because if you remember at the time, we were like, this could happen everywhere.
What a weird time that was.
Yeah. The transition was interesting because it wasn't something that I had set out to do, but I felt like called to it in a way. The first show that I hosted was called We're Speaking. And so it was focusing not on women's issues, because women's issues are everybody's issues, but on policymakers, politicians, people who are women. So, it was eye-opening and also very scary and sad. Just hearing about everything that was to happen, I was like, oh, this is it. So I very much wanted to be that apolitical person at that point, because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go back and do my comedy. That was so much more fun to open people's minds, which is, what in my highest hopes, that's what I was doing. But recognize that there has to be people to make the bridge. I think a lot of people don't realize it's not that people are purposely tuned out. They're just living their lives. Before I got into political media, I was just living my life. And yes, I was political in the sense of what I created, but I wasn't glued to the news 24/7 the way I am now.
Yeah. So. And now you're fully in. And your show, Punching Up, is one of my favorites. I had the privilege of being on it, I think, 3 days after the election. I think I was just coming out of my rage and shame blackout. And what I love about Punching Up is how you describe why it's called that and how we need to take that to speak truth to power and challenge institutions. So give us a little rundown of what the meaning behind Punching Up is.
So Punching Up is, and I don't know if the concept is originally from comedy or if we borrowed it from someplace else. I'm sure we did. But in comedy, generally, the idea is that you should always punch up at power structures. You criticize, you critique, you parody, you satirize power structures, as opposed to punching down on people who are marginalized. And why? Because part of what being a comedian is to speak truth to power. Comedians are able to say what, if a politician were to say it, might put their lives in danger. I like to study a lot of political comedy from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's like, wow, you could get away with saying a lot more if you said it as a comedian, especially as a Black comedian. So for me, I just started in my brain. I just tangentially went off into something. I can't even remember what the question was anymore because I just started thinking about Black politics.
Like why it's called punching up and what? Yeah.
That was the question. I was like,
I do that too. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, no, because also I was just thinking about the Smithsonian has an exhibit on Black comedians, and so
Currently?
and they're all Black political comedians. So I don't know if it's a standing exhibit that's always there. It's Dick Gregory, Moms Mabley, Richard Pryor.
Cool.
Very cool.
And I'm thinking, that's probably one of the first ones that they're going to try to dismantle with this executive order. So punching up, the reason we started punching up is I wanted to have a show that wasn't necessarily just political, was trying to branch out a little bit from, hey, we're just going to talk to politicians, but we're also going to talk to comedians. Like I just had Gary Goldman on, who not really wasn't a political comic per se, but always wrote a lot about class because he grew up poor and talks about it in his comedy. And I think what he said during the show, he's like, well, now class has become one of the issues that are at the forefront of politics. And so now his comedy, it feels overtly political in a way, even though it wasn't always. And so I think for me, it's just really important to talk about a lot of the issues that are going on in the world in a way that people can understand them, and also to humanize our politicians. Mallory McMorrow was just on, and we talked about Cars for a couple of minutes, and it was so much fun and amazing. And I think it's really, really difficult when we get so immersed in the policy that we forget that the policy is for the people. And if the people don't understand the policy or the people who are making the policy, then they don't see a connection in it for them whatsoever, which is why we're in the situation we're in now.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. And I think that's so important because I think that a lot of Americans have this cognitive dissonance that, like, oh, they're talking about the middle class. That's not me. I make $250,000 a year. You know what I mean? Like, you're still middle class. Like, you might be upper middle class, but you're still middle class.
Working class.
Working class.
Anybody
right?
who has to work to live is working class. Like, we need to rebrand that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And those stories that how you can humanize policy is just, it's more important now than it's ever been. And when people are, not wanting to pay attention to politics anymore, most people, I think a majority of Americans, are just disassociating with politics in general. So being able to bring those humanizing stories might be one of the only ways we can get through to people.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, I think people think someone else is going to take care of it. Like, it's the bystander syndrome. It's the call 911. But if you don't point at somebody specifically and say, you call your senator, if it's just the general, call your senator.
Right.
A lot of people are like, oh, well, somebody else can take care of that. And Liz, I'm so glad you brought up the thing about working class, because I can't remember which article I was just reading this in, but it was, talking about like the ultra wealthy who don't work for their money. I think it was an Atlantic article talking about the it's borrow die.
Oh yeah. It's like borrow. It's like you okay. Look it up because it's basically that they borrow money and then they borrow, or they they take out a loan, they leverage that money. You've talked about this in our previous things about how like Elon Musk just borrows against his on paper worth.
Buy, borrow, die.
Die.
Yeah, and I mean that's how every single wealthy person in this country sustains their wealth. I mean, most of the wealthy, all their money's tied up in homes or companies, and so they're able to, use that leverage.
But that their wealth comes not from working, but from leveraging their assets versus anybody who's like you said, somebody who's making $250,000 a year thinks they're not working class, but if they're working for it, if it's not their assets making that wealth for them, if it's not passive income, then they're working. Because if they die, they have, all they have maybe to pass on to their children is wealth, is money, but not necessarily an asset that's going to keep passively generating enough. So this idea that somehow everybody is because this also ties in with the manosphere, because everyone's watching these podcasts because they're hoping to be wealthy enough that they can be in that class. And so it's
we were just walking through the Fort Lauderdale airport, and there was a book that was How to Become a Billionaire. And I was like, that is the most alt-right
you need to buy that book
I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, there is...
You don't become a billionaire in this world. Like, it's not something that you can wake up, start a company, and just, become a billionaire. If you create a successful company, you might be able to sell it for tens of millions, hundreds of millions, but it's going to take generations for that to reach billions of dollars. And that's just a concept that so many people, especially working class and men that are, used to your point, watching all of these manosphere content, they can't connect the dots that, you might have a woodworking company and it might make you a few $1 million, but you're nowhere close to Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates.
Yeah. And I think there's also a difference, and I don't think people who vote Republican really get this, that are people who maybe are kind of ultra wealthy, who actually maybe do live that life of buy, borrow, die, people making tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, or people who are actually billionaires. And some of them we try to get money out of them to raise money to take down fascism. And what they understand that I think their peers do not is that there is a working class, and then there is maybe this asset class, and then there is a ruling class. And the ruling class is about less than 100 people in this country. It's generationally wealthy or ultra wealthy. I don't know if you guys have seen that that thing a video that somebody does with the grains of rice, and they take a grain of rice, they're like, this is $200,000. This is the average net worth of an American, when you add up all their assets, their homes, their cars, whatever. Okay. Then you look at a millionaire, and it's just a few more grains of rice. Then you look at somebody who has tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, that amount, looking, if 1 grain of rice is $200,000, can fit in my hand. Then we look at Elon Musk's net worth in grain of rice, and it takes up this entire area that we're sitting in. And it's just it's so, even the person who makes tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, it's this Elon's pile, these very few oligarchs have so much wealth and so much power. They are the ruling class. They call the shots. They decide how our world works. And the reason that we cannot overcome them is because the people who have a handful of rice, they think they are them. They think that rallying against them is going to hurt them, and it doesn't. We were in Florida this weekend for a DNC retreat, and Alyssa Slotkin said we need something that can fit on a hat, and I think it needs to be billionaires versus everybody. Come on, guys. We are not, just because you drive a luxury car or your parents have a couple of houses, there are people in this world who can buy and sell you more times over than you could ever imagine. They're controlling your life. They're controlling your children's life. They're controlling the money. They're controlling religion. They're controlling everything. Wake the fuck up.
Well, yeah, I agree with you 100%. We have a billionaire supremacy problem.
Yes.
truly and I think similar to white supremacy, it is used to divide everybody who is not that. And so, and it's unfortunate because it's the way we've chosen to do politics in America, that money, I mean, what already, I don't know when this is going to come out, but seeing what Elon Musk is trying to pull off in Wisconsin is unnerving. And people on the outside looking in at the way we do politics, it's like, I mean, how do you say that it's democracy when you have a man with that much wealth that can influence any election he wants to, and also threaten to primary anybody who steps out of line? Like, those are two big, I mean, the voter suppression and the voter manipulation at this point is so beyond the pale that I don't think even Shonda Rhimes could have written something like this.
And it actually sometimes gives me hope. I think if he primaries enough Republicans or threatens to primary them, I think they will really start making steps towards campaign finance reform. It sounds wacky, but I think that pissing off enough politicians on the right with his blatant disregard for any kind of principles of democracy and just saying, well, if you step out of line, I'm just going to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into some little congressional race. I think if he will have to do it several times and it will take several years, but I think it'll start to piss them off. And I think that together there could actually be, I think he will drive steps towards, I always try to come from a place of hopefulness, but I think he could.
I know, I was like, that's so hopeful. I was like, here's what I think might happen. And seriously, because I'm an optimist, but I always, in the back of my mind, I'm like, but this is the thing that'll probably happen. But let's, keep the optimism out there, is that, MAGA makes up almost the entire Republican Party at this point. And so what does MAGA represent? It represents people who are cravingly after power and do not care at all about their constituents.
Right.
And so this idea that there will always be somebody who's willing to take Elon Musk's money or whoever, next oligarch's money to do their bidding. And so Trump was smart enough this time around to make sure that he was surrounded completely with people who would do his bidding. And so I think we're going to have to get incredibly creative about how we approach campaigning going into the next elections. And I don't know that we've figured it out yet. I'll be honest, in many ways. But I think we have to start being a lot more creative, because for the time being, they're going to have a lot more juice than we do.
And before we get into current events, and this kind of dovetails into that, what do you think is the role and the importance, and why we need to keep it up, of humor in all of this? Like especially for punching up, especially for combating fascism, and we're up against so much. Like, some people say the best thing we can do about Elon is make fun of him.
Yeah. So a couple things about humor in politics. I think we've been doing it wrong. I think humor should be used to draw attention. It's the honey, it's the sugar, it's the thing that gets people to pay attention. But then I think you quickly need to pivot to a very serious message. And I think what happened is that we are doing humor for humor's sake and not, and humor for relief, right? And we do need that. And I think it serves that purpose, but I think it serves an even higher purpose, which is, and just to break things down really quickly for everybody who doesn't know, but I feel like everybody knows this already. The whole point, like when doctors say laughter is the best medicine, it's because laughter produces serotonin, dopamine. These are all things that are good for our brain and our psychological makeup. But on top of that, it also improves critical thinking skills and opens up neural pathways in a way to help incorporate information, new information. And laughter is a very communal thing. And so when we talk about needing community right now and needing to bring people together, laughter does that. And that can do that across, political partisanship. If you're laughing at an apolitical joke with somebody, that brings you closer to that person. And so, yes, like that is a need, and comedy should continue to do that. And I think Josh Johnson is a comic who does that really well. But then humor for political campaigning purposes, I think we need to be very careful about the way we go about doing it, because we can attack Elon Musk with humor. Okay. And?
Right.
Yeah.
And does that bring out more voters?
Right.
Does that awaken people to the seriousness of having the world's richest man control everything? No. All it does is release the tension. That's what humor does, is it releases tension. So when you're writing a joke, you build tension, and then you break the tension and you release it. We don't actually right now need to release tension. We need to use tension. To be able to get us to the next thing. And so I think humor is incredibly important. We all need to laugh at our own ways and do our own things. But if we want to talk about using it in politics and poking fun at politicians, yes. But then we need to take it to the next level, which is why I like working with the Lincoln Project, because it's not humor for humor's sake. It's this is funny, but then now that you're laughing, we're going to punch you in the throat with some very serious information that you need to be able to survive right now. So
that's good advice, especially as we, one of the goals of this podcast is to be kind of like an incubator and something that people who want to have a future Talking Politics on the internet can use and can learn from our guests. And I think that is, you just said it really perfectly. Let it be the honey, but don't let it be the whole meal, because you need to eat your vegetables. So now we're going to get into some things that have happened this week. It's been quite a week.
I feel like, wow. It's like, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
We'll start with maybe the least depressing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is there something least depressing? Okay. What is that?
Well, okay, it's still really depressing though, but I think that the group chat is the least depressing of everything that we're going to talk about today.
It is. But it's scary long term, but yeah. Signal Gate.
Yeah, so we all know that The Atlantic broke a story earlier this week that one of their reporters, Jeffrey Goldberg, was added to a Signal group chat, all of our favorite ways to communicate a group chat, with existing Trump administration cabinet members to discuss about an upcoming missile strike in Yemen. Now, Signal, everyone thinks, is this really secure way of talking. Yes, it's more secure than your phone's messaging app, and it's more secure than, Instagram DMs. And people say that because, the Signal staff can't go in and, read your messages, but foreign adversaries can for sure still access what you're saying. And it doesn't take a wizard. So the blatant, I don't even know if it's stupidity. I think it's honestly just a disregard for national security, which the Trump administration flouts as one of their most, the thing that they care about the most, but they don't actually give a shit about that. One of my favorite things, I'm a dance teacher on the side, and one of my favorite things to tell my dancers is don't tell me, show me. And I think that that's how we have to look at this Trump administration. National security is important. Don't fucking tell me, show me. Don't use Signal to communicate Yemen airstrikes.
Yeah. Wild. What? I mean...
Did you believe it when you first saw it?
Oh, of course. I mean, of course I believe it because I know how incompetent they are. And so, and like you said, it is callous disregard. But what I'm always interested in as a writer and as a comedian is how they're messaging it to their base when they fuck up. And I don't know if I can swear.
No, you
Sorry.
can.
Yes, we love to swear.
But as a comedian, I'm interested as a writer, how are they messaging this? What is the narrative? And so for me, it was really infuriating to see once again how instead of taking accountability, which is what personal responsibility, accountability is actually supposed to be the Republican conservative value. And you take accountability and responsibility because then you can correct whatever error it is and make sure it doesn't happen again. But with this administration, what we see is that they explain it away. And it doesn't matter how they explain it away. It's the fact that rather than admit to their mistake and move on, they're wasting our energy, our time with this subterfuge. And then they get caught in a lie, like when Tulsi Gabbard got caught in her lie and then said, oh, well, I misremembered. And it's like, this kind of stuff is so frustrating to me because I'm like, is anybody looking at this? Is it, and to not have our media and our politicians seize on the underlying issue there as opposed to the specific details, because the underlying issue and the through line is that they will that they don't care. Like they literally don't care. Like that's the through line. So they'll just say whatever it is that they want to say, knowing that the media is just going to chase this story until it's the next story, until it's the next story. And then we never actually get to the root issue, which is Republicans don't care about governing. They don't care about their constituents. All they care about is getting the votes that they need, which honestly, every time I think about all of the clips of Trump saying, you don't have to worry about voting again, I take that very seriously. Yeah. And you can see by the way that they are handling everything right now, they don't care what their constituents think. They're like, oh, okay, fine, you're going to pop off at town halls? We'll just stop having town halls then.
Yeah, there's
right? These are not behaviors of a group of people who think that they're going to have to answer to votes ever again.
Yeah. There is no, I also think it's interesting that one of the reasons they use Signal versus the proper channels of communication is because those channels of communication are documented, are archived, and they have to, report and be held accountable for what's said in those. Whereas if you use Signal, it's like it didn't happen.
They disappear, I think, the messages.
They disappear unless you add a fucking reporter.
They can disappear or not disappear. But another thing about using Signal and not using official channels, they're probably one of the, again, I'm not a national security expert here, but I'm assuming our secure channels are actually secure.
Yeah.
Now they know Signal can easily be hacked, or you can just accidentally add somebody to a chat and don't even need it to be hacked. But if we believe what all of the experts tell us, which is that Putin bought and paid for this administration, then we know, and Elon Musk as well, and we know that Elon Musk and Putin were having conversations in 2022. If that's the case, well, of course they would want to use channels that would make it easier for Putin to listen in on what's being said.
Yeah.
Why would they want to use a SCIF? Why would they want to use any kind of secure room? Why would they want it to be in-person meetings? It sounds like they want people to have this information because otherwise you wouldn't. It's like a thing when a cheater wants to get caught kind of thing. Well, like in this situation, like there's a reason why they're using that. They want everybody to return to work in the office. I'm like, well, then why couldn't this have been a meeting?
Yeah.
If you want everybody else to be in the office,
you
be in the office too and have it as a meeting and not as a group.
Hypocritical. Yeah. And we always try to chat about these current events through how they're covered in new media. And one response that I think got a lot of play on the internet was Ossoff's response in the Senate hearings. So we're going to play it because I think he so perfectly sums up exactly how we're all feeling. So we're going to pop this up right now.
This was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No,
The
Director
answer- the
Ratcliffe,
reason
I
I
asked you
say
a yes or
no-
no question, and now you hold on. A national political reporter
You can characterize it how you want.
was made privy
The White
to
House has
sensitive
made
information
clear
about
that there
imminent
was an
military
inadvertent
operations against a
mistake,
foreign terrorist
an inadvertent
organization.
mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge
to a
mistake?
seal.
That wasn't a huge mistake?
Well, I think they characterize
This is
it
an
as a
embarrassment.
mistake.
This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error. And by the way, we will get the full transcript of this chain, and your testimony will be measured carefully against its content. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mic drop. Ossoff was the one grown up in the room.
And I think it's important for all of those things to be said for the record so that they're on the official record. That being said, with this administration ignoring court orders, acting as if the courts don't exist, that it's tyranny to try to hold anybody to account.
Yeah.
They've created an entirely different system that is parallel to our actual
True.
system. And so, yes, I think it's important that Ossoff said everything that he said. But I think where we can come in as creators and new media, when you talk about how it is that we cover these things, I think it needs to be pointing out the underlying context and the history and the nuance, because everything happens so quickly that we forget that we can tie this back to, and this is, I think these are the clips that I like the most, are the ones that will just show clips of Hegseth saying that, I think it was Hegseth who said that people should be fired for doing something. That's where I think new media can do things more quickly, because as people are more and more engaged, they almost have that memory. Oh wait, didn't so-and-so say this?
Right.
One of my favorite things is to just go to Twitter and search their timeline. You can just search someone's timeline for a keyword, and I'll just, these are all the things that Nikki Haley said about Trump. Right. Cool, I'll screenshot all of these and use these now. So
hot creator tip right there.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yes. And that actually, I will try to see if we can find this chart. A partner of ours showed it to us, which was the Google search terms in 2016 of how many times people searched about Hillary's emails, and how it wasn't just like a blip on the radar when she was cleared of any wrongdoing, when there was the first drop of WikiLeaks, the second drop of WikiLeaks, and then the Comey reprobe. It did not go like this, right? Each time one of these came up, it was a steady, people were constantly searching about her emails, but her emails was literally like, there's a reason we always say that. It was a constant drumbeat of the media, and people were talking about it. They didn't let it just be a flash in the pan. And so to kind of compare these two things, I think another thing that I want the creator community to be aware of is, don't let this die. Keep talking about this. This was huge. It's breaking through. Dave Portnoy talked about it. It is breaking through to the other side. It's freaking them out. They're all about national security. They're all about, protecting our troops, or so they say. And
the facade of that.
Yeah.
They don't actually care.
Exactly. But I think it's really important that we stay focused on this. And you're right. We are not going to have a normal trial of this. I don't think, of course, people aren't going to get fired. This isn't 8, 10, 12 years ago where something like this would actually matter. And Hillary went on trial about like everything. Remember the Benghazi stuff? Like she was actually put on trial and like held accountable for the most mundane perceived slights of imperfections. This is so blatant. This is so dangerous. And of course, nothing will happen. So all we can do is hold them accountable in the court of public opinion. It's the only thing that we have left. And, you know, as we say, like we may not have an election ever again, but we have to at least kind of act as if we will, and we have to make sure that this stays at the forefront of people's attention, that this isn't the things that people forget about, like when Trump and Vance were having that temper tantrum in the Oval Office with Zelensky, and everybody forgot about how Trump was impeached one time for like trying to extort Zelensky for information about Hunter Biden and withhold military aid. Like, we forgot about that. When we were having those discussions of them being insane to Zelensky, we were not hearkening back, as you say. We were not pushing back to that time where, like, this is so blatantly hypocritical and problematic, and like we've been here before. So I think that that's a great lesson to creators, to be tying it back to the history and the nuance, and like just stay on it.
Well, and I think creators have a better, I think most creators have a better handle of what moves people than most traditional political strategists do, because most content creators are living, eating, breathing, all of that digital media. And so they understand how to create a hook or how to reach a particular audience in ways that somebody who is, you know, I don't want to be ageist, but if you're 60 plus, you're probably not online in the way that somebody who is younger is. And so I think there's a unique opportunity, and I think we're already seeing it with the AOCs, with Frost, with Maxwell Frost, in the way they use social media in the strategies to talk to new audiences. Yes. They're not always preaching to the choir. They're listening, and then they're interacting and engaging, because that's technically the difference, right? It's not just I'm speaking from here and not hearing anything back. Like they're actually incorporating, listening to their audiences. And so I think for creators, like we're closer to the average person, like physically, literally, but also metaphorically.
Yes. I think that that's like such an important distinction. And I think one of the, again, I feel like we could make like a graphic of like Maya's 10 hot tips just from this one episode alone. And one of them is, you have so much power in your phone to listen to your audience, to DM with them, to poll them, to ask them to put up a question bubble. Like, you have your finger on the pulse of the electorate, and you have a different slice of the population. You have to figure out, you know, what that slice is, who is your audience, and also try to maybe grow outside that echo chamber. But like there's a lot of power. I also find it really interesting, as you said, TikTok and YouTube. That is where I get the most hateful comments. It's interesting. Some people say that that Instagram is meaner than TikTok. My TikTok, it's way more right-wing play than my Instagram. So I get like really insane stuff on TikTok, but I find it's like you do have to listen to them, understand what they're saying or what they're not saying, or where their anger is coming from. Like, there's a lot of, I don't fully understand it and couldn't like summarize any of my key takeaways from these insane people, but like it's data and you gotta internalize it.
Yeah, I also think that, just honing back in on like what they were actually talking about in the Signal chat, it's really hard for people that aren't super politically engaged or chronically online to understand what a missile strike in Yemen means for like the greater world picture. Especially, you know, we can relay this back to the TikTok ban and how that's bad for national security. And that was like wildfire. Everyone was talking about it. People are still talking about it. They think it's bad for national security. No one really understands why. We need to figure out how we can message this, because what we're also trying to do on this podcast is how do we message like a fifth grader to the country? And so, yes, talking on Signal is bad, but people probably are like, oh, they messed up. But I don't know. I think that there's something in there with the messaging about
why it's bad
that we still haven't hit the nail on the head. We're just talking about their incompetence, and that burns out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think explaining it in terms of a couple of things is, one thing I like to say is these are supposed to be the national security leaders. This is the leadership. So these are the people who should be the most secure. So they're not allowed to make mistakes. If they make mistakes, people die. And I think, so that's on one hand. And so you could say to people, like, if your boss were to maybe make a mistake, and I'm trying to think of something that is, let's say you work at an amusement park and your boss is responsible for the safety of the roller coasters or something. I don't know. This is a good, let's see where this analogy goes. And as a part of that, they're responsible for the maintenance, the upkeep, and you're the person who's responsible for actually going on the track.
Right.
Now, let's say because of neglect, or they were tired, or they didn't care, who cares what the reason is, they didn't do something they were supposed to do. And one of your coworkers was on the track, and because of this this mix-up, somebody got killed. Mm-hmm. Somebody got hurt. Mm-hmm. Somebody died. Maybe it was a coworker, maybe it was a friend, whatever. Now, that didn't have to happen, right? If your boss were to then explain it away and say, oh, well, it was a mistake, or try to pretend it didn't actually happen, right, even though everybody saw it. And so I think there needs to be, I guess my point is, maybe this isn't the best metaphor or analogy, but there needs to be a play-by-play that explains it in terms of what the average person experiences. And every person has the experience of having their boss try to excuse something away that they would get fired for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in this case, this was a life or death type of situation. So explain it in life or death terms, maybe not with amusement park and roller coaster.
No, I followed. I liked it. Yeah, it's a fuck up of epic proportions, and yeah, we need to both message it broad and specifically. And it dominated the news cycle, but as we say, like, I hope that it stays in the news cycle and in a meaningful way. As we said, with like, I hope it is funny, but I hope, as you taught us earlier, that we go deeper than just funny. Another thing that we wanted to talk about this week, that one, I wanted to ask you this question before we got into current events. So I'll ask you the question and then we'll circle into what this event that we want to talk about. In this new media space, it's very male dominated, especially on the right, but it is on the left as well. The manosphere is very male dominated, and it is, very, very heavy on toxic masculinity, and it attracts a certain type of men. Why do you think new media is so heavily male dominated? And then how does that kind of feed into this male loneliness epidemic that we've seen so much coverage on? This show Adolescence premiered on Netflix this week. So it's really been on the zeitgeist a lot, male loneliness. And I think it has a lot to do with this male dominated manosphere. Let's talk about men.
Let's go men. I have a bit that when I write it down, like the shorthand for it is sad white guys.
Yeah.
And it's because sad white guys take people's rights away, right? Like happy white guys are too busy enjoying leisurely activities. And golfing, hang gliding, whatever. It's the sports that they enjoy. And I think it's no secret that men are having a hard time finding their way right now not right now. Now they seem to have found a way. It seems to have been approved. But
right.
up until the election, it seemed as if they were having a hard time finding their way, because suddenly women are, not suddenly, but over the course of time, women are more empowered and able to put boundaries and say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And I think a lot of men weren't raised in such a way that they knew how to handle boundaries. Instead, when those boundaries were put up, it felt like a wall to them. And so in boundaries in society, right? Like, you can't say this thing in the workplace anymore. Oh, well, here's another wall. And so I think what happened, if you want to see it visually, is walls kept getting put up, boundaries, at which point they should theoretically go to therapy and do some soul searching and go, okay, well, now that I'm here in this little room by myself, what have I learned about what I can, how I can change my behavior so that I can reintegrate myself in society, right? And obviously that happened for lots of men. Lots of men are healthily existing.
Yes.
In the new space. I don't know what to call this new world that we're living in right now, because it feels like we're all being forced to live in the manosphere. But in this sort of nebulous space where there is healthy femininity and healthy masculinity and just healthy people being healthy, I think it's because we've taken accountability for our actions, and we've learned, and we grow, and we evolve. The manosphere is for men who have decided that they don't want to do the actual work of reintegrating in society. They disguise this by acting like they're doing work, by, I'm, working on my business, and I'm grinding, and I'm doing push-ups, and it's like this, that's easy. Those are easy things to do because they're just a formula. You just do them. You just do the things. I go to the gym too, buddy, but I'm not an asshole. Because that's the thing. It's like they act like I also believe in grind culture in many ways. I was also at the gym every morning at 5 o'clock before the pandemic. I was in the gym every morning. If I was at the gym at 6 a.m., I was late.
Wow.
All right. I was at the gym by 5:15, 5:30. By 8 o'clock, I'd already meditated. I journaled, and I was getting my kid to school.
Love that.
Okay. Every single day except for the weekends. And so, but not to step on other people, but to give myself the energy and the time and space I needed to be able to approach all of the things in life that I wanted to do from a healthy, balanced perspective.
Yeah.
And so what I think you have all these small, angry men in here now, but they look around and all they see are all these other small, angry men, and they have comfort, like a gang. It's like an old gang of men. And so I think the work now becomes, because they're just destroying things, right? Like they're not actually creating anything. What they're doing is destruction.
Yeah.
And so that is not sustainable.
Right.
Yeah, and the message has just been that, women are succeeding at higher levels. They're getting educated at higher levels than they've ever been before. Men aren't going to college as much. But I just want to read a few statistics that
these are good.
Yeah,
I like
that
this.
will put everything in perspective, and then also tie back into why this has become like this. We've seen this big cultural message. So 71% of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are held by men. 75% of seats in the U.S. Senate are held by men. 95% of any Supreme Court justice that's ever served has been men. 100% of the U.S. presidents have been men. 70% of the wealth in the United States is held by men. 91% of Fortune 500 companies are run by men. And 83% of leadership in the international media companies that run how and what we talk about in our life are run by men. So... yeah, when I hear this male loneliness thing, I'm like, shut the fuck
You
up.
still run everything.
I can't. In the international media, who do you think Rupert Murdoch. Like, who do you think are pushing these narratives that men are more oppressed than they've ever been? You still run the fucking world.
Remember that line in the Barbie movie where he's like, wait, you guys aren't doing patriarchy? And the guy's like, oh, no, we still do patriarchy. Like,
Just have to be quiet about it.
Yeah, exactly. We're definitely still doing patriarchy. We are definitely still doing patriarchy. I think what we are seeing among men is not a lack of opportunity, is not a we're making them victims and they're so lonely. It's a skills gap. Men that aren't succeeding are not succeeding because they don't have the skills to make friends and relate to women in a way that isn't angry and dominating. But by and large, even like they're still getting out. The majority of them are still getting out there and dominating the world. Like I don't think that this. I think that this is like such a false narrative that it's so hard to be a man right now. Those statistics really illustrate that it is not.
So annoying.
Well, it's a perception gap. It's the same thing happened with the election and what people perceived about whether she was speaking or whether Kamala Harris was speaking to the working class or not. It's like, yes, of course she was speaking to the working class, but somehow this narrative was built. And so there was this, I think it was Pew Research poll that just showed the reality versus the perception on a number of issues.
Yeah.
According to most people, like, oh my God, there's so many trans people in sports. It's like, no, they're not. And like the actual number is this, but you would ask somebody who watches Fox News, and it would probably be like 50% of the athletes. It's insane what perception can actually do. And so, to me, like I like to play around with different ideas of messaging, and I don't know if you notice it in my videos sometimes. Like sometimes it's tough love, sometimes it's like sweet, and I want to ask, like when I have some of this tough love stuff that I'm going like, okay, well, guys, how are you so stupid? Like, are you stupid? Men, are you stupid that you don't see that 75% of the people in power are men? Are you stupid that you don't get that? Or are you stupid that you are not that? Because something doesn't actually compute. And hey, you've been in charge this whole time. So if everything's terrible, guess whose fault that is?
Yes.
It's your fault. So
yeah,
like,
and when we look at young men and the struggles that they're going through right now, the show Adolescence is really popular right now. I only watched one episode because I'm really bad at watching depressing shows. I don't know what that says about me, that I like do this as my job, but then when there's fiction that's like slightly heavy, I'm like, it's too much for my delicate little sensibilities. It was really stressing me out over one episode, but people should watch it. It's really good. It's essentially like the dangers of social media and teenagers and all of that, and particularly young men and acting out and how they can like ruin their lives. But I think it is, when we look at like this negative way that young men are facing the world, that's not the fault of women. You guys are still in charge. Maybe it's your fault.
Yeah, and there's just one more thing that I want to add. So also I don't know if you guys are familiar with Scott Galloway.
Yeah,
he talks a lot about the how men are getting left behind, and he talks a lot about how Democrats and their like pillars of what they're fighting for, they never call out young men. They call out, people of color. They call out LGBTQ
women.
They call out women, but like there are men that are people of color. There are men that are part of the LGBTQ space, and Democrats don't do a great job of messaging. We know this, but like the Infrastructure Act that the Biden-Harris administration passed, 70% of all of the jobs that are created by that are in industries that are mainly men, and so like we actually created so many jobs for young men that are not college educated, and we need to be out there banging that drum.
Yeah.
And we care about young men. It's not that we don't care about them. We care about everyone equally. And we have, as a society, not cared about everyone equally. So sometimes other people need to be lifted up, and you can't, like, it's so frustrating because we're doing the work and we're just not messaging it. So that's just something I wanted to add.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm glad you pointed that out because this is where humor can come in. I don't know if you remember, there was a movie from the 80s called Ordinary People.
Yeah, Ordinary People,
Yeah.
Where they're making the advertisements in the institution, and one of them in the mental institution, and one of them is like, Volvo. They're boxy, but they're good. And so this is an opportunity where it can be like a commercial, like the Infrastructure Act. It should have been like, hey, 70% male-dominated industry.
Right.
40% working class white guys from X place. This job's for you.
Yeah.
Right.
This act is for you. And you could actually quote some of those statistics and have those numbers become a part of the zeitgeist so that it's not always a perception game, but it actually, we can't be so afraid of numbers because I know I hate math, but I know when I hear numbers, I go, oh, that resonates.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, we are fighting for everyone to get educated. That includes young white men. We are fighting for the minimum wage to be raised for everyone. And that includes this group of people that they say are being left behind. Just because we are also giving those opportunities to people that are not white men does not mean that it takes away anything that they have. Everyone can be entitled or deserve to have the same exact things.
And we need to bring everything back to your life isn't bad because of immigrants and trans people, young white men. Your life is bad because of billionaires and corporations. They're buying up all the housing. They're shipping away manufacturing jobs. They're not investing. And there were a lot of Democratic programs that helped people get educated and have a fruitful life. And those are being taken away by Republicans because they have the best interests of billionaires in mind and not the average Americans. Like, that's why your life sucks.
Well, and so that's the messaging that I've seen a lot of people pushing right now, and I think it is the most effective, and I think that's what needs to be figured out, how to put on a hat or a postcard, because no matter what, they're always going to try to use trans people and people of color and immigrants as a wedge issue, and they're always going to try to do that sleight of hand. So the more that we can direct that attention, I think every messaging has to direct the attention from, no, it's not the black person doing this to you, it's the billionaire.
Right.
And so I think that's the a slight modification of the, billionaires versus everybody else, because when you say billionaires versus everybody else, they're always going to be able to be like, oh, but I'm eventually going to be a billionaire, or that's not talking about me. Yeah. Whereas if it's constantly, literally, if we go back and read how fascism works or look at any of the stuff, we already know the groups that they use to target. And so literally it should be baked into our every strategy. And my goodness, the fact that we are doing it a little bit, it drives me crazy that we don't scale it. Can I ask you that question, Liz? Liz, why are Democrats having such a hard time scaling the freaking messaging?
I think truly because I think as a party we're not fully aligned on that messaging. Yeah. Like the fact that I'm just going to say the fact that we're thinking about nominating J.B. Pritzker for president shows that we're not aligned on the messaging that like billionaires and corporations bad and divisive. And again, he's a good billionaire. He is, objectively.
We're just saying general.
But I don't think that he should be the Democratic Party's nominee for president. I think he's great, and he's a great governor. We just had dinner with him, and he was amazing. His speech was amazing. He's really Everything good. Is good. But we need to, as a party, we need to, as AOC says, we need to just be dogs for the working class. And a reminder of what the working class is earlier in this episode. If you work for a living, you're the working class. Mm-hmm. We need to be dogs for the working class. We need to get away from being the party of the elites, and we can't have people like Bloomberg and Pritzker be our frontline leaders. Like it's just it doesn't jive, and we need to return to like a central theme of like, this is who we are. And yes, does that make it harder to get donors and corporate dollars, whatever, if we're like, you guys are the enemy? Yeah, probably. But we're smart people. Let's figure it out. Like, let's just have like a little meeting with them when we're like, all right, we don't mean you, but the messaging for the next 4 years is going to be that, you know, you're the root of all evil. And you know you are. And that's why you do things like be the governor of Illinois and give away all your money. Like, he knows it's bad, and that's why he's an altruistic person. He'll be okay if we message against him. I'll talk to him, guys.
Yeah,
I
they're a good family. They give away a lot of their money. But
They do.
yeah.
They do. I honestly, I don't know that many, but the few billionaires that I do have this conversation with, they get it. They're cool with it. They're like, yeah, billionaires suck. Also, they even realize they are not like the 5 billionaires that we are talking about. So to wrap up.
Well, at the end of the day, the stability of the nation and thus the stability of the world hinges upon whatever systems that we have being sustainable.
Yeah.
And so if a billionaire doesn't want to live their days out in a bunker,
Yes.
then they're going to want to.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of the messaging that actually needs to happen, because everybody else is going to be on the outside. They're going to be there
Exactly.
in their bunker. And we're going to be able to find those bunkers, guys.
Do you want to live under martial law? Do you want to live in a third world country? Do you want to live in a place where you can't go get a coffee, where you have to send your kid to like an armored school and go in with like guard? Like, no, you don't want that. You want to live in the world that you currently live in. You want to walk and talk.
But they can't even picture that, because they really truly think. There's a book out. I'm not sure if it's out yet, about these bunkers. Yeah. Like they're creating these entire worlds underground. And all I can think of is like, that's very fixed.
Yeah.
And so people will be able to find your bunkers. And I don't care how much private security and private armies that you have.
Yeah, your security and your army will turn against you at some point.
There's a show about that on Hulu right now.
Yeah.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, it's called Paradise. It's actually really good. If you're bored and looking for a way to escape into something that's also quite depressing, I do recommend it.
I think that most people who have $1 billion have the kind of ability to think complexly about these issues and realize that money shouldn't equal ultimate ruling power. I made a TikTok that was like, I heard a fascinating statistic that if you took all the billionaires just in our country and you stack them on top of each other from the bottom of the ocean, wouldn't that be great? And my friend saw it and was like, girl, you're in fundraising. Like, you're trying to like get an organization off the ground. You need to delete that. Like, billionaires are going to be offended by that. And I was like, first of all, it got 50,000 views. I'm not deleting anything that gets that kind of engagement. And two, like, I stand by that. And if you're not going to
have $500 million,
you can't even have $1 billion.
like...
You just got to give it away. So that's how we feel. Put it on the billionaires versus everyone. And then maybe the back of the hat should say, you are not a billionaire. So before we get into our fun group chat game, I'm just going to wrap up with Connect Forward had 2 exciting campaigns do really well this week. I'm personally going to take credit for Trump pulling Elise Stefanik's nomination, because I think he saw how well we were doing.
Traction we're getting.
Yeah, and he was like,
Elon Musk offering to pay people
$1 million to vote in the Supreme Court election. So we are resourcing creators in Florida and Wisconsin. We've gotten over 4 million.
It has to be more after that Motherhood for Good.
Yes.
Like probably closer to 6 million impressions now.
So organically, Motherhood for Good made a thing that she was like, everybody make a video that's like, Wisconsin's the one thing Elon can't buy, and that has gotten a ton of just like organic traction. I can't even take credit for that. That's all her. But our creators in Wisconsin and Florida have been making amazing content. It's gotten over 4 million views. We had a very small investment. I think our budget for this was like $20,000 to $25,000. So to put it into context, 4 million views is similar to 100 MSNBC commercials. And let me tell you, 100 MSNBC commercials cost a lot more than $20,000 to $25,000.
Yeah.
So this is the future. This is how we message, and we are waiting with bated breath for Tuesday. The polling numbers look good in Florida and Wisconsin. So let's go, new media making electoral
If you live in
change.
Florida and Wisconsin, go vote.
But I think by the time this comes out, it'll be after
you
April
better have
1st.
voted.
You better have
You better voted yes.
Yeah.
And so then finally, we're going to wrap this up with a little game to harken back to our group chat discussion. I hope that from Signalgate, somebody introduces legislation to ban Signal group chats over 5 people. There's no good can come of them. I hate group chats. I hate them.
I mute them. I mute group chats. That's how I feel about
But I see the number. It just stresses me out. And like, should I be reading it because I'm in it?
No.
And like, it makes no sense. They accomplish nothing. But if you did have a group chat, let's say 6 people would be the max in this legislation,
yourself.
including yourself. No, I think 7, including yourself. So
Wait, legislators?
Yeah.
Legislators? Okay.
Yes, you have to
But-
make 3, but you have to add 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. What would your dream?
Wait, why do I have to add Republicans?
Because
to my
that's
group-
what makes this fun.
my group chat.
Yeah, sorry. It's a.
You have to pick
this is the new legislation.
the best worst.
Best
it's like
worst.
taking
Serving, like
ACT.
what that are actually serving right now.
think it could be
like,
anyone.
No, they can be like
be
like
anyone.
Mitt Romney or something.
Yeah.
I know. I was like Adam Kinzinger because
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I'll start with the Republicans. Kinzinger. God. Okay, that was it. It has to be 3 Republicans.
Liz Cheney, would you throw her in there?
Would I throw Liz Cheney? The thought crossed my mind, and I was like, no, not really. Don't really. Could it be dead or alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll allow dead.
Dead or alive, yeah.
Colin Powell.
Okay.
Powell.
Okay.
And I'm trying to give you the hard ones first. What
Could do,
Republic?
like Bush. Michelle Obama seems to like him.
I don't care how many can-dos she gives that man. He is not getting in the group.
We could go down a George Bush rabbit hole, but we'll do that another time.
I'm like taking this so seriously, like this group chat's actually going to exist. Like somehow if I say
like-
I
this,
mean, you
if
could
I
try
say-
on Signal.
Yeah.
You're right. Actually, I might as well just try. Okay, so Adam Kinzinger. Who's the second one I said? Oh yeah, Colin Powell, even though he's dead. And oh my God, Michael Steele. He's still currently a Republican.
Oh, yeah. I like him.
I don't
Yeah.
care. He cracks me up, and I think he's very funny. And he would be calling everyone out in the group chat, and so I think that's important. And Dems, AOC for sure. Maxwell Frost for sure. And then who's the guy in Texas? Is it Cesar? It's like I got it. The rep from Texas, and I'm going to look this up because I follow him on social media, and I feel like he has such a good take on everything that I'm just like I think he's great. I think he has a
Why don't I know this guy?
Greg Casar. I don't know how to say his last name. Casar.
Okay.
He's the rep for the 35th congressional district, and he has just such a great take on everything. I saw one of his videos pop up, and I was like, "How is this guy not more prominent?" I'm like, "I want to hear."
He's only
more from him.
35 too.
Let me see this guy.
I was young.
cute.
Okay.
Oh, I've never heard
I
of him.
have a cute group chat. That's
Yeah.
very important to me to have an attractive group chat.
Gonna have to add Ossoff in there. Okay, I will stop making
Yeah,
jokes
let's
about how
stop
cute
making-
Ossoff is.
We can put Ossoff in the group chat for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a great group chat. I feel like we could solve some real problems with that group chat. But yeah, people I think ultimately this teaches us stop making huge group chats because you might put somebody in there that you don't want in there. It's
Okay.
just dangerous.
Can we have some, like, you can cut this out.
That makes me want to keep it in.
You can keep it in if you want to, because one day there's going to be some movie about Lindy Lee. I remember her from the group chat on Twitter. And every time she popped something in that group chat, I was like, I don't like this woman. I don't trust this woman. I was like, she's completely, this is all about self-promotion for her.
Yeah.
And she just rubbed me the wrong way the entire time. I actually disliked that group chat because she was in the group chat.
Really? What was the group? Who formed that group chat?
I don't want to say. You're not going to use this, right?
No, we won't. We'll cut it
Well,
out.
I want to.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll talk
Wait,
about it
can
after.
we talk about that? Because I do love talking about Lindy Lee. You can tell us after more about that group chat.
Yeah.
But
But it was a
anybody
very-
who doesn't know, Lindy Lee is kind of like, so she's a fundraiser and donor, and so the event that we attended, it would have been something that, like, Lindy Lee, had she not been banned from the Democratic Party, would have attended. And yeah, she's just the ultimate grifter. Like, she basically post-election was like, I'm leaving the Democratic Party because of blah, blah, blah. And she used it, and she acted like she had a much bigger role in the party than she did. And she basically, it just is out to promote herself. And it's like, if being an anti-Democrat is the way to do that, then, like, that's the path of least resistance. It reminds me so much. I went to college with this kid. Should I say his name?
No.
Okay. He's kind of a public person now, though.
No.
Okay.
Oh, don't say
No, we
it.
don't want people coming after us.
Okay. But basically, he tried to be be in sports media, but he wasn't good enough. So now he's just turned into, like, a conservative pundit. So it's like, literally, if people aren't successful at something, the path of least resistance, the easiest way to get on television, the easiest way to be famous is to be, like, a conservative hack.
Well, especially for a person of color, like for me as a Black woman, I made a joke post where I put on a long straight wig and a lot of eye makeup and made a fake Fox News badge. And did this video, and people really thought I was a Fox commentator, like on YouTube, actually. And I had to go into the comments and we were like, this was a parody, this was a joke.
That.
But, like, the thing about Lindy Lee in the group chat was she was in it incessantly, but it was always selfies or pictures of her with some prominent Democrat talking herself up. And I was like, this is so clearly obvious in self-promotion. I was like, I never trusted her. And so when you're in a group chat with somebody who has who gives you raises the hair on the back of your neck, you either need to call that person out, I'm realizing, because I had wanted to call her out. You either need to call them out or kick them out of the group chat.
Call them out or kick them out.
Just be aware of your surroundings, guys, in these group texts.
Yeah. And that also teaches us that you should scroll through and look who else is in there. Could be Lindy Lee, could be an Atlantic, could be Pete Hegseth. You never know who is in your group chat.
There's a lot of unfriendly.
Stay safe out there, guys. And on that, I could talk to you all afternoon.
Yeah, that was
really
so
appreciate
fun.
you spending this time with us. It was informative. It was funny. There were so many great takeaways for burgeoning creators. Where can everybody follow you?
I am for the moment still Maya on stage on all platforms, though I am thinking of changing that because I just don't know if I was going to go back to stand-up comedy once we saved democracy. And when Kamala Harris went, I was like, yeah, I can go back to stand-up. And now there's too much work to be done. And people don't need stand-up right now.
Oh, God. Well...
Talk about it offline.
Yeah, we might want to. We were trying to do a comedy show in Chicago. We'll chat more because we do need to infuse some. We need the honey. So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Stick around so we can talk more about Lindy Lee off camera.
I will.
We should have a Patreon.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to.
Oh my God.
For all the
amazing.
actual,
Yeah,
the
for
snark, the
real.
Democratic Party
Juice,
snark.
the insider juice. Thank you
Blind
everyone
item.
for being with us. We will catch you all next week. God only knows what fresh hell this will bring. I'm hoping it's a good week. Let's go Wisconsin and Florida. We'll check back in with you then. Thanks for being here, Maya.
Thanks, Maya.
Thanks to our producers.
having me.
Thanks, Good News.